Friday, October the 1st. My mother rang up the Citizens' Advice Bureau to find out who her MP is. Then she rang the MP at home, but he wasn't there. His wife said that he had gone on a fact-finding mission to the Canary Isles. She sounded very bitter. Saturday, October the 2nd. Courtney brought a letter from the Fens. King Edward Cottage, Yosserdike, Norfolk. Dear Pauline, your dad and me was sorry to hear about your trouble, and we hopes as it is now cleared up. We never did take to George. He had a hasty temper, and we think as how you're better off without him. As regards the money, Pauline, well, we only got a few good days at the potato picking, so we're a bit short ourselves at the moment, but we enclose a postal order for Adrian, as we know he has got a sweet tooth. If you would put your trust in the Lord, Pauline, you wouldn't keep having such trouble in your life. God only punishes the heathens and the unbelievers. We were shocked last Christmas as to how much smoking and drinking went on under your roof. You wasn't brought up to it, Pauline. Your dad has never touched a drop in his life, nor has he been a slave to nicotine. We are decent, God-fearing folk what knows our place, and we only wish that you would take after us more before it's too late. Uncle Dennis, Auntie Marcia and Cousin Morris have moved out of the caravan and into a council house. They have got all modern facilities. Auntie Marcia jokes that it is just like Buckingham Palace. Perhaps when you have had the unwelcome baby, you will come and see it for yourself. Anyway, Pauline, we are praying for you. Yours affectionately, Mam and Dad. P.S. Auntie Marcia asks if you ever found Morris's grey sock that disappeared last Christmas. She's not been able to rest through wondering about it. Sunday, October the 3rd. 17th after Trinity, full moon. My mother wrote the following reply today. Dear Mam and Dad, sorry about the short delay in replying to your wonderfully comforting letter, but I've only just emerged from a drunken stupor. Adrian was ecstatic to be sent the postal order for 50 pence and rushed straight out to buy me a can of lager. He's such a thoughtful kid. Nothing would give me greater pleasure than to come down and inspect Auntie Marcia's council house, but I fear that I will be quite unable to drag myself away from the endless round of parties that my life now revolves around. You know what us hedonists are like, living for kicks and not going to church. I fear that a meticulous search has failed to turn up the missing grey sock. I can appreciate Auntie Marcia's anxiety on this point, so I enclose my last pound note to enable Auntie Marcia to buy a pair and therefore rest in peace. What you say about George is quite true, but I married him because at that time he laughed a lot. There weren't a lot of laughs in our cottage in the middle of the potato field, were there? Cordial greetings, your daughter Pauline and grandson Adrian. I begged her not to send it. She said she would think about it and put it behind the bread bin. Monday, October the 4th. No gyro. Tuesday, October the 5th. No gyro. My mother cracked today. She phoned up the local radio station and told them that she was going to abandon her child at the Social Security office unless she was given her gyro. My digital clock radio woke me up to the sound of my own mother's voice telling the airwaves about our financial difficulties. She was downstairs on the hall phone talking to Mitchell Malone, the half-wit DJ. My mother said she was going to abandon me at the Social Security offices unless the SS manager contacted her by noon. Mitchell Malone got dead excited and said, Listeners, we're in a high noon situation here. Will Pauline Mole, pregnant single parent, abandon her only child in the Social Security office? Or will Mr. Gudgeon, the Social Security office manager, who was on this programme last week, present Pauline with her long overdue cheque? Keep tuned for regular updates on Central, your local radio station. We sat and waited for the phone to ring. At 12:30, my mother said, Put your coat on, Adrian. I'm taking you to be abandoned. At 12:35, as we were going out of the door, the phone rang. It was my father pleading for his name not to be mentioned on the air. The presence of radio reporters and journalists caused a mini riot in the Social Security office. All the claimants wanted to tell their stories. The tramps got overexcited and started brawling amongst themselves. The staff staged a walkout and the police were called. Mitchell Malone was doing an outside broadcast. He played a record called "The Lunatics Are Taking Over the Asylum." I was only abandoned for 45 minutes before Mr. Gudgeon gave my mother an emergency needs payment of £25. He said it would see us through the weekend. He asked my mother to come in and see him on Monday morning, but a police sergeant said, "No, Mr. Gudgeon, you will go and see Mrs. Mole at home." Mr. Gudgeon sucked his ragged moustache and said, "But I've got a meeting on Monday morning." The sergeant swung his truncheon about and said, "Yes, your meeting is with Mrs. Mole." Then he strolled off and started knocking the tramps about. Wednesday, October the 6th. A picture of my mother and me was on the front of the paper tonight. My spots hardly showed up at all. The headline said, "A Mother's Anguish." The article underneath said, "Attractive mother-to-be, Pauline Vole, 58, took the desperate action of abandoning her only child, Adrian, 5, in the Carey Street Social Security office yesterday. Mrs. Vole claims to have waited 3 weeks for a giro check. She said, 'I was desperate. Adrian means more to me than life itself, but I was driven to take the drastic step of abandoning him to draw attention to our plight.' Mr. Gudgeon, 42, the manager of the Carey Street office, said today, 'Mrs. Vole has been the unfortunate victim of a staff shortage. The member of staff who deals with the computer broke his toe drinking squash.' Thursday, October the 7th. The following corrections appeared in the local paper tonight. Mrs. Pauline Vole would like to correct an inaccurate statement attributed to her in yesterday's edition of the paper. She did not say, 'Adrian means more to me than life itself.' In the same article, 'drinking squash' should have read 'playing squash.' We apologise to Mrs. Vole and Mr. Reginald Gudgeon and thank them for pointing out these unintentional errors. Friday, October the 8th. My mother phoned the local paper to demand that they print the following statement. Mrs. Pauline Mole is 38 and not 58 as was reported in Wednesday's edition. My mother is fed up with the neighbours talking. Last night Mr. O'Leary called out, "Sure, you're a fine-looking woman for your age, Mrs. Mole." Saturday, October the 9th. Moon's last quarter. The Guinness Book of Records rang up today. A posh bloke spoke to my mother and asked if she would mind her name being included in the oldest women to give birth section. He asked my mother to send her birth certificate. My mother said she hadn't given birth yet and she was only 38. The bloke said, "Sorry for troubling you, Mrs. Vole," and rang off. Read the paper from cover to cover, but nothing about my mother's age appeared tonight. Sunday, October the 10th, 18th after Trinity. My mother spent the day reading the Observer with her ankles raised above her head. I took the dog out. We went to the woods to see the half-built executive houses. We explored a house called the Winchester. The dog cocked its leg in the master bedroom and started to squat down on the barbecue patio, so I dragged it away. Monday, October the 11th. Columbus Day, USA. Thanksgiving Day, Canada. Courtney brought a dead exciting postcard. It said, "Dear Adrian Mole, your work interests me enormously. If you would like to see it published, please write to me and I will furnish you with details. Sincerely yours, L.S. Caton." It was sent from an address in Bolton. I wonder how Ellis Caton heard about me. Perhaps Mr. Tidyman mentioned me over the dinner table at a BBC banquet. I sent Mr. Caton a short but dignified reply asking for further details. Gudgeon turned up and gave my mother the rest of her money. On his way out, he asked who the men's size 10 shoes under the sofa belonged to. My mother told him that they belonged to her son, Adrian. She said, "I'm not likely to start cohabiting in my condition, am I?" Mr. Gudgeon blushed and tripped over the dog in his haste to get out. We had a Brillo dinner tonight. Chicken curry, and my mother put a strand of saffron in the rice. We ate it off our knees. To be strictly accurate, my mother ate it off her lump, in front of the television, while we watched an old Tudor wreck called the Mary Rose get dragged up from the sea bottom. My mother said, From what I can see of it, the sea bottom is the best place for it. I was disappointed not to see any skeletons, but the commentator told us that it was an historic occasion, so I tried to feel a bit overawed. Tuesday, October the 12th. A first year called Anne-Louise Wergfield asked me for my autograph today. She said, "I saw your picture in the paper and told my mummy that you go to our school, but mummy said you didn't because the paper said you're only 5, so I want your autograph to prove that I know you." I gave the kid my autograph. I will have to get used to being pestered one day, I suppose. Practiced my signature all through maths. Came home, watched the Falklands Task Force marching through London, looked for Clive Kent, but didn't see him. Wednesday, October the 13th. My mother has received a clothing voucher for school trousers from the Social Security. It is made out for £10. To get the trousers, though, I have to take the voucher to one of the 3 special shops approved by Social Security. All the shops named, Henry Bloggett's and Sons, School Outfitters, Swinging Sixties, and Mick and Dave's, are notorious for selling crap clothes at big prices. I will not demean myself by taking the voucher in. I have put it in my wallet. When I am rich and famous, I will look at it and perhaps show it to my friends to prove that I once knew the sour taste of poverty. Thursday, October the 14th. Went to see how Brett is getting on today. He seemed to know I was his brother because when I looked into his cot, he gave me a daft gummy smile and held on to my finger dead tight. His skin has cleared up now, so perhaps there is hope for the kid. Grandma is looking dead haggard, but not as haggard as Stick Insect. The 2 women are getting on each other's nerves. Grandma doesn't approve of Stick Insect using plain flour for Yorkshire puddings, and Stick Insect doesn't like the way Grandma wraps Maxwell's chest up in Vic and brown paper at night. She says the rustling prevents her from sleeping. When I got home, my mother cross-questioned me about Stick Insect and Grandma. She wanted me to recall every expression of face and nuance of voice during my visit. Friday, October the 15th. I have put my name down for the school play. We are doing The Importance of Being Earnest by Oscar Wilde. I am having my audition next Monday. I hope I get to play Ernest, although my mother says the handbag is the best part. She thinks she's such a wit. Monday, October the 18th. The weekend was far, far, far too boring to write about. Mr. Golightly, the drama teacher, stopped me halfway through my Henry V speech. He said, "Look, Adrian, The Importance of Being Earnest is a brittle comedy of manners, not a macho war epic. I want to know if you can time a comic line." He gave me a speech about Victoria Station to read, listened, then said, "Yes, you'll do." I have decided to be an actor when I grow up. I will write my novels during breaks in rehearsal. Tuesday, October the 19th. Mrs. Singh accompanied my mother to the antenatal clinic today. The gynecologist has told my mother she must rest more or she will be forced into hospital and made to stay in bed. Her swollen ankles are caused by high blood pressure. She is dead old to be having a baby, so the doctors are giving her more attention in case she dies and they get into trouble. Wednesday, October the 20th. When I said hello to Pandora in geography, my voice wobbled out of control. I kept quiet for the rest of the lesson. Thursday, October the 21st. My mother asked why I was so quiet. She said, "You've hardly said a word since Blue Peter. Is anything wrong?" I shrilled, "No," and left the room. Friday, October the 22nd. My voice can't be trusted. One minute it's booming and loud like Ian Paisley, the next it's shrill and shrieking like Margaret Thatcher's used to be before she had voice lessons from an advertising agency. Saturday, October the 23rd. Bert Baxter rang up to tell me that my father has got the sack from Manpower Services. I kept silent. Bert said, "Ain't you got naught to say?" I wobbled, "No," and put the phone down. I will have to go to the doctors about my voice. It can't be normal to suffer like this. Sunday, October the 24th, 20th after Trinity, British summertime ends. The dog went berserk and ripped the Sunday papers up today. It had no explanation for its bizarre behaviour. The hall was covered with pieces of newsprint saying, Ken Livingstone today defended Falklands upkeep rockets to £700 million. Israeli soldiers watched helpless as Trouser zips inquiry. Fireman will accept 7.5%, but mood is explosive. I swept the pieces up and put them in the dustbin and put the lid on the outside world. Monday, October the 5th. Holiday, Republic of Ireland. Moon's first quarter. After a silent day at school, I took my unstable voice to Dr. Gray's surgery. Dr. Gray didn't look up from his horrible scribbling. He just said, "Yes." I wobbled and shrilled and boomed all my fears about having a defective voice box. Dr. Gray said, "For Christ's sake, it's only a voice-breaking, youth. It's come a bit late, but then you're physically immature generally. You should take up a physical sport and get more fresh air." I asked how long the uncertainty would last. He said, "Who knows, I'm not a bloody prophet, am I?" I could hardly believe my ears. The first thing I do after leaving school will be to take out a subscription to Bupa. I have resigned from the importance of being earnest. To act, you need a reliable voice, and I haven't got one. Tuesday, October the 26th. Barry Kent has committed educational suicide by wearing his Hell's Angels clothes to school. Mr. Lambert pretended not to notice. Barry Kent is 4 inches taller than him, but Mr. Scruton spotted Kent in school dinners and ordered him to take them off, saying that the studs could cause somebody to lose an eye. Kent went into the 4th year's cloakroom and took his jacket off. He was wearing a studded death's head shirt underneath, so Scruton made him remove that as well, only to reveal a leather-studded vest. I don't know how Kent manages to carry around so much weight. Mr. Scruton has sent Kent home with a note. Wednesday, October the 27th. Some of the more impressionable 4th years came to school with studs on the back of their blazers. Thursday, October the 28th. Mr. Scruton has added another school rule to the million others. Studs are not allowed to be worn anywhere in school except on the soles of sports boots. After school, Pandora and some of her gang rushed out to buy studs to put them on the hem of their underskirts. Friday, October the 29th. My mother has the baby in 2 weeks' time. The hospital did a test on her today. She's getting into a panic because the spare room is still a spare room and not a nursery. We are still dead short of money. The maternity grant only bought half a second-hand pram. Saturday, October the 30th. The dog went berserk again and ripped up my priceless collection of old beanos. I have been collecting them since I was 7, so I was heartbroken to see them defiled. I felt like booting the dog around my bedroom, but I let it off lightly by chucking it down the stairs. It's always respected literature in the past. It will have to go to the vets, just in case it's got a brain malfunction. Sunday, October the 31st, 21st after Trinity, Halloween. Daylight saving time ends, USA and Canada. At 5 o'clock, I was asked by my so-called best friend Nigel to go to his Halloween party. He said, "Forgot to send you an invite, zip-face, but come anyway. Dress as a warlock or you won't get in." I decided not to go as a warlock. I wanted to break away from stereotypes, so I went as a fiend. My mother helped me to assemble a costume. We used my father's old flippers, one of my mother's long-legged black leotards, and an orange fright wig she bought years ago when she went to my father's fishing club dinner and dance. I looked a bit indecent in the leotard, so I put my swimming trunks over the top. But when I got the whole lot on, I didn't look a bit fiendish. I just looked dead stupid. My mother had the idea of putting a nylon stocking over my fiendishly made-up face. It looked a bit better, but my costume still lacked a certain something. At 7 o'clock I had a crisis of confidence and almost took everything off, but my mother fetched a can of green neon spray paint that we used to perk up last year's Christmas tree. She sprayed me from head to toe with it. The dog whimpered and ran under the draining board, so I knew I must have achieved the right effect. The short walk to Nigel's house was an ordeal. A gang of little kids in pointed hats ran up to me screaming, "Trick or treat!" I kept telling them to bugger off, but they followed me to Nigel's, trying to tread on my flippers. Nigel wouldn't let me in at first because I wasn't in warlock costume. He's so literal. He'll end up working with computers if he's not careful. But I explained that I was a fiend, and he relented. Nigel's mother and father were upstairs watching telly, so we raided their drinks cupboard and drank Tia Maria and egg flip cocktails. There were no girls at the party, which was a bit strange. Nigel said that girls make him sick. The Warlocks and me danced in the pumpkin light to Duran Duran records. It was okay, I suppose, but without girls it lacked a certain je ne sais quoi, French for something or other. At 10 o'clock, Nigel's mother ran in with a running buffet. The food was all gone in 10 minutes. Most of it was eaten, but a lot got thrown about. Without the civilizing influence of girls, boys returned to the wild. The school are making me read Lord of the Flies by William Golding. I am sharing a book with 3 Dumbos who take half an hour to read 1 page, so it is turning out to be a frustrating experience.